one day Dad had not been around for a couple, 2-3 weeks, and he drove up the driveway, and I thought, my Pops is coming home. I really missed him. He got out of the car and he said he needed to talk to me and wanted to show me a few things about need to be done around the house on a regular basis. And then he told me he was leaving. I don't remember if he hugged me or not, but I was probably too stunned to even think about it.
Right.
The best of the week on Relevant Radio.
We know the statistics. About 40% of first-time marriages end in divorce, and 2/3 of second marriages, and it's just no matter how you cut the statistics, they're not good, right? So today we're going to explore the trauma and the scars that surround divorce. And there is no divorce without deep emotional injuries for the couple, but also for the children, the extended family, parents, moms, dads, cousins, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters. Everybody gets hurt when a marriage fails. So today I'm joined by a good friend of mine, Bob Atwell, who's experienced these wounds both as a child growing up in a divorced home and as an adult whose marriage ended in divorce. So listen, if you grew up in a divorced home, suffered a divorce, or thinking about divorcing your spouse, you're going to want to hear what Bob has to say about this all too common event. Welcome, Bob. How are you?
I'm doing good, Doug. Great to be here. Yeah. I can't say I love being your resident divorce expert, but anything we can do to help people be happy.
Right. No, but you know what? Yeah, and thank you. It takes a lot of courage to show up here and be on the show and to talk about your personal experience. But I know why you're doing it, because one person can benefit from your experience. If one divorce can be avoided, if one marriage can be saved, then it's all worth it.
Absolutely. Yep.
Well, that's why I'm doing what I do as well. But the message is different from you because I've not experienced the tragedy of divorce, but you have. And so you can speak from a place, I can speak from theory and science and research, and you can speak from the heart about what really happened in your life and stuff. So, listen, the causes of divorce are many and varied, and regardless of the reasons, there's always deep pain involved, especially for the children. In 2017, Lila Miller posted 8 questions on her social media asking adults whose parents had divorced and their children to talk about their experiences. She was overwhelmed by the number of people who responded to her and their stories of pain. The result was a 326-page book that she published that she titled Primal Loss. But she's also made the book available as a PDF for free, so for couples who can't afford to buy it. And I think I've read large parts of it, and I've interviewed Lila on the show. And anyone who has children thinking about divorce, read this book first. It will open your eyes to what that pain is all about. So anyway, so I think, Bob, I think it's a good place for us to start. I mean, you know what? Listen, thanks for coming on the show to talk about something that still causes you great pain. I know, and every time we talk about it, I can see it in your face. I can see it in your eyes. And few people are willing to be this vulnerable. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being here.
Doug, there's an old saying, if you haven't been a great example, at least be a clear warning.
There you go. I like that. I like that. So,
and I want to stress that I'm 66 years old. Okay. My parents' divorce was 54 years ago, maybe.
Okay.
And I just want people to know, regardless of whatever circumstances you're in, I am no fan of divorce. But God's mercy never ends.
Yeah.
His healing power is always present. When you call on his name, he will be there with you. Yeah. And you may not feel like this emotive presence, or you might.
Yeah, you might.
But if you persevere, healing comes, life goes on.
Yeah.
You'll be happy if you allow yourself to be.
Well, you're right. I agree with that. If you allow yourself to be, and if you give the wheel to Jesus, right? Jesus, take the wheel, right? If you let him drive the vehicle, things generally work out better than if you think, well, no, I know the right way to go, right? And so, and I think, the tough thing about this topic, Bob, for sure is, I want this show to be about hope, right? About fixing marriages. And I realize not every marriage gets fixed.
Right.
And divorce is a reality that we have to deal with and live with and manage and move through, et cetera. But, if we can prevent one divorce, that's a good thing. Or if we can help one person navigate a divorce a little better, that's a good thing as well. So we've got to reach out to all kinds of people. So, well, Bob, let's start. Tell us about the story of your parents' divorce. You were probably Sounds, if I'm doing the math right, probably around
12 years old, maybe. Yeah, 12. I think it's 1970. And by the way, my father passed away just about a year ago. And my siblings, there's 5 of us. And there was a lot of some tears, some laughter, or whatever. But the story had a sort of a kind of a happy ending. So I don't want people to despair.
Yeah.
And my mother's still alive, Elizabeth. God bless her. She's a wonderful 93-year-old woman.
Yeah.
So, but if I take you back to 1970, the first thing I want to point out is divorce was unusual then. It was
very much.
It has been normalized now, so that people are kind of almost numb to it.
Yeah.
But in the little town I lived in, it just wasn't a thing. I mean, I think there was one other family in town that was broken, is the way it was referred to. And people say that's stigmatizing it. I found the community was helpful. They were aware this was a real problem and that we needed attention. My dad had a very good career. I remember my early childhood as my parents were awesome. Dad, they were warm and friendly, and the mood in the house was upbeat till kind of very abruptly it wasn't. And the fighting got ugly, and then Dad kind of would disappear for a while. And but I remember as a kid thinking, frankly, it was my nightmare. I mean, is this possible?
Yeah.
Right? And I think that kids still feel that way, and they still experience it that way. But the long and short of it is, one day Dad had not been around for a couple, 2-3 weeks, and he came. I remember it was a sunny day, and he drove up the driveway, and I thought, thank God my pops is coming home. I really missed him.
Yeah, sure.
And he got out of the car, and he said he needed to talk to me and wanted to show me a few things about, that need to be done around the house on a regular basis. And then he told me he was leaving. And I don't remember if he hugged me or not, but I was probably too stunned to even think about it.
Right.
And he got in the car and drove away. And he left and went to California. And there's lots of ways that kids can experience this thing. I think when you and I first interacted, I at some point I said, when I see kids of a couple going through a divorce, first of all, I'm very attentive to couples going through a divorce. Like, is there anything that I can do
to help? Yeah.
But when you see the kids, I'm right back on that driveway watching my dad drive away.
50 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I said, I mentioned to you, I think I'm a happy guy.
It's been my experience for sure.
But those scars are real.
Yeah.
And it is the wound, the scar tissue around the wound can heal, the infection can go away, but the scar tissue's there and it affects you. But if you allow God's grace, honestly, like God's grace never stops flowing. And there's something good that can come out of those things, which is not to say that my parents' divorce should have happened. It is to say God's in the business of redeeming things too.
Exactly. Yeah, no.
Right.
So how did you explain it to yourself in your head that Dad's gone? How did you rationalize it, figure it out?
First of all, in a way, it was good to have siblings.
Were you the oldest?
I'm the oldest boy. My life became very difficult for Mom, and Mom became very difficult. And I say that only because if you guys listened at the beginning, my mother is the most wonderful 93-year-old that I know right now. But I can tell you in 1970, the 80s, not so much.
Well, you got to think, too, right at that age, divorce was so, at the time, so unusual. She probably lost friends. She might have had, the stigma attached to her. I mean, this might have been really hard to walk into church on Sunday morning and everybody whispering. I mean, this could have really...
I mean, I experienced in her anger, she sort of pushed people away. But I couldn't. My siblings and I, we'd still talk as Dad was passing away, and we wouldn't talk in front of him. We were giving him love, and he was giving us advice and all that stuff. But why did it happen? How did it happen? What was the cause? Still, like 50 years later, these fully adult, kind of pretty functional adults are wondering about it. If I could tell you just a little chuckle on that, my dad, I convinced my dad that he could be cremated, but, don't scatter the ashes. So, I became the custodian of the ashes.
Okay.
And he told me he wanted to be buried, and he wanted to be buried in Wisconsin. and where, frankly, he hadn't lived for 55 years.
Oh, wow.
So we kind of talk, and my mom's already picked out her burial site.
Yeah.
And she prayed for Dad a lot. She said, no, don't put him next to me. I care that. And the kids and I have said, siblings and I have said, well, Mom, you guys didn't ask us about the divorce. We'll take care of this burial.
We'll decide.
Anyway, that's too much laughter. There's a lot of pain.
Yeah, of course. But you need laughter, too. Yeah. So were you angry? How would you characterize how a 12-year-old figured this thing out?
I think I was angry, but I couldn't allow myself to be angry. Like, who am I going to be angry at?
Yeah.
Who's really at fault here? And I went back and forth in my mom, in my mind. Like, did Mom drive him away, or is he really that he just laughed?
Who's the villain?
Yeah, right. Who's the villain?
Yeah.
And I think it wasn't until maybe 20 years later I allowed myself to be angry. Like, I was really, deep down I think I was angry, but I was not.
Yeah.
I can hear my sister Mary right now, if she were listening, saying, yeah, you were pretty angry when you were 15. You were pretty angry.
Well, that's my question, right? So how did that affect the trajectory of your high school years?
It was really difficult with Mom. As I mentioned, she reacted the way some parents do, I think particularly some mothers do, is that she wanted to not allow my dad to be in contact with us. And and we missed him. He didn't not want to be in touch with us, but you sort of had to hide to make the phone call and all that kind of stuff. And then there was a scheduled visiting time. I kind of spun out by the time I was 15 into problems as a teenager. I stayed a pretty good student, kind of kept my head above water that way, but I was dabbling with drinking and drugs and stuff. And I mean, it was not a good way to cope, so.
Yeah, it's not, right, for sure. But back then, I mean, there weren't therapists around, and you didn't think about going to therapy. You just toughed it out. You're coming out of the wild 60s. And
somehow God, I really have no explanation. The only explanation I have is God. But, and the example of my grandparents. I had wonderful grandparents, and I hope there's grandparents listening, and I could give them hope that you need to play a critical role when things break down.
Yeah.
The family fabric might get stretched, attenuate, but hopefully you're willing to be part of the holding things together.
Yeah,
my grandparents did. They were awesome. Their home was like a haven of rest, peace, people.
That's great. I kind of would like to debunk that myth of kids are resilient. Yes, they are. But the analogy I use, I had a cousin when I was growing up, and he cut off a finger in a lawnmower. Had a lawnmower accident. He stuck his finger in there, and boom, it chopped off his finger. Well, okay, he was resilient. He went on to have a fine life. He went to college and all kinds of stuff, but he went through college with 9 fingers, not 10. Well, life would have been better if he'd have had all 10 fingers, but he was resilient. Well, you come through the divorce, you've got the scars. Well, you went on to have a very nice career, and you've done very well, but you've got this scar. Wouldn't it be better to have done all these great things you've done without the scars of the divorce?
Yes, and Doug, the statistics for children of divorce.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what they are. We can say they're resilient, but the statistics suggest, feel like you're pretty good about looking at old 66-year-old Bob, but there's a lot of kids who get off track, and there's no guarantee they get back on.
Correct. That's right. Well, correct.
It affects their
drug use,
grades, drug use, problems with the law. It's all statistically
They become sexually active at younger ages. Well, and you were 15, right? You were drinking beer and smoking pot. Well, you shouldn't be doing that when you're 15, right? No one's going to say that's a good thing for a 15-year-old to be doing. Why do you want to make people suffer just because they're resilient, right? And it's just so much better to fix the marriage. It's certainly better for the kids to grow up in intact homes. And in fact, I came across this statistic today, and Bob, you fall right into this, unfortunately. But kids from divorced homes are 50% more likely to divorce than kids who grew up in intact homes. So it's a
generational issue.
Correct.
Yeah, and it was in my case. And, I was divorced eerily similar to my parents' divorce.
To your parents, right? So you kind of repeat it. And you had 5 kids. How long did your marriage last?
13 years.
13 years and 5 kids, and there you go. So you kind of repeated the pattern.
Yeah.
So
what
do you want people to learn?
I want to call a shout out to all the people at Relevant Radio that listen and support Relevant Radio, and Doug, for you to step in here and do this show. But it's necessary. Sometimes Catholics, we don't want to talk about it because we know divorce is not our Lord's will. but we need to talk about it because so many people are touched by it, and
Well, exactly. I mean, it's not our Lord's will, and sin is not our Lord's will, but we've got a sacrament dedicated to sin called confession, right? And so we need to bring healing to people who are divorced, and I'm committed to trying to keep people from getting to that point. But once you're at that point, we need to do a good job of helping those folks heal as well.
Right, because they will heal if they allow our Lord to, and if they get to confession.
Let our Lord in there. And get to confession. Yeah, confession's really the deal. So, listen, thank you, Bob. This entire episode of Marriage Unhindered is on the updated Relevant Radio app. The Relevant Radio app is completely free and updated daily with fresh articles, podcasts, and prayers.